I'm Mario Bova, the Finance Manager here at Honda of downtown Chicago, and you must be here for another episode of Cars on Film. The film I want to talk about today is one of my favorite automotive films of all time. It's the 1973 classic American Graffiti, directed by George Lucas. The film is set in 1962 Modesto, California, in the heart of the drive-in, diner, and automobile culture that was so prevalent in that part of the country during that time. In fact, George Lucas actually made the movie as an ode to his own youth spent in Southern California around the hot rod scene. And talking about hot rods, boy, there are too many in the movie to even name, although there are definitely some stars. Speaking of stars, let's talk about the Who in the movie. In that case, that would be, well, again, a huge star-studded cast, but some of the more notable actors: Harrison Ford, Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, and a real-life radio DJ, Wolfman Jack, very famous in that time period, also playing a radio DJ in the movie. The what? Well, like I said, there are too many cars in the movie to name. If you're a hot rod guy, this movie's been on your TV 150 times. But some of the most notable cars in the movie: a 1955 Chevy, a 1932 Ford Coupe, and my personal favorite, a 1951 Mercury Coupe, driven by members of the Pharaohs Car Club, who swindle a young Richard Dreyfuss into causing a little mayhem at the local pinball hall. The film is set in Modesto, California, as I mentioned earlier, and it nostalgically depicts the popular culture, specifically the popular culture as it relates to diners and drive-ins and hot rods and cruising the boulevard of the early 1960s. You might consider it America's last moments of innocence before the tumultuous late 60s and early 70s, the Kennedy assassination and the Vietnam War, etc., etc. The movie is great for a lot of reasons, but when it comes to the cars, they're definitely the stars. It ends in one of the greatest races to ever grace the silver screen. It stars Bob Felfa, aka Harrison Ford's 1955 Chevy, against John Milner's 1932 Ford Coupe on Paradise Road. And for those of you who haven't seen the film, I won't ruin the ending. Suffice to say, it's a little more explosive than you might imagine. Again, the cars are truly the stars, and there are more, like I said, more than I could even mention here. Every single frame is filled with a great piece of American muscle, starting from the early 1930s all the way up until about 1960. There is something in there for everyone. And aside from the cars, the movie is genuinely enjoyable. Lucas set out to capture the innocence of the early 1960s and the innocence of his own youth growing up in Southern California, and I think you definitely see that on film. It's a lighthearted film, it's a feel-good film, it's a great coming-of-age story, and it's got some great cars in it to boot. So, the movie is American Graffiti. The year is 1973. The director was George Lucas. I'm Mario Bova, and this has been Cars on Film.